Hey, greetings. Michael Didier here. Thank you for joining me. Well, I haven't told this to the people that I teach here on YouTube, but I've been married. Married, you say? You know, I haven't even seen this woman. I haven't touched this woman. But Yehovah has brought this woman into my life. How do you marry somebody when you're miles apart, 3,000 miles apart? How does Torah teach us to take a woman? You know, you do it by a vow. The woman makes a vow to serve her man. You know, in the Christian church, in the world also, it's all about each of us having vows. But is that what Yehovah says? No, he doesn't. The woman makes a vow to serve her man. She becomes his servant, as my hand is my servant. Carissa was Carissa when she made the vow. Now I call her Raya. Raya means my lover, or lover of me. Oh, I know this runs so contrary to what most people assume to be right, doesn't it? But we have learned many, many lies. This week, I have been packing. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize there's so much stuff. I mean, I have one trailer, 4 foot by 8 foot by 4 foot. Practically everything fits in it. But putting it all together, packing it together and getting it ready for a 3,000 mile trip is no minor undertaking. But, gotta tell you, it's a labor of love. Raya Didier, she's on our call right now, is a woman of worth, dedicated to serving me, going where I go, being on the journey with me, and it's so very exciting to see what Yehovah is going to be doing in our lives. Well, I say that in part to tell you that next week I'm not going to be in the class. We're going to cancel the class for this week. I'm not going to have time to prepare for it. It's just going to be too much involved. I'm going to be in Chicago. The following week's going to be tough, but I'll make it work. But next week I'll be in Chicago. I'll be actually seeing Sheila and Rick and Terry. There's another man there. Barry Keaton is there. I might look him up. I'll see my mother and my father, which I haven't seen in about 20 years. And my 2 sisters are also there also. One of them is married with children. I haven't seen their children in ages as well. At any rate, it's going to be an interesting journey. Going by myself, I've got some people that there's a new moon, falls right in the middle of our trip, my trip. I'm going to stop and rest on that new moon. So I'm going to spend 2 nights with a Facebook friend, then go on the following 2 days. And I'll have 2 days to him, 2 days to Chicago. And then I'll be there for the weekend, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. I'll leave Monday morning for our house. Well, very exciting. Let's get started with our class this week. We left off here. This was right after the battle. I believe this is in chapter 40, verse 23 of Yasher. We had just finished the 6-day, 7-city war. We had annihilated 7 cities who came against us. Everybody who came against us was destroyed. Finally, they said, let's make peace with these guys. This is too costly. And it was a Raphiah, or Yaphiah, king of Hebron, probably the one who knew the Hebrews the best, because that was their home base, Hebron, who basically sued for peace. He seems to be a very, very important king in Canaan as well. We'll see if he plays other roles in their time in Canaan. But he had kings who were under him, and those kings had kings who were under them. Those kings had captains, and they were told to bring each king 3 captains, and each captain to bring 3 of his officers. And they did, and they came to Jacob's seed one by one. 21 kings. And they were put under tribute. The sons of Israel, Jacob's seed, Jacob's seed and the sons of Israel are the same people. That's why I say when these guys are fighting, think about what Israel's seed is going to be doing at the same time. But all these kingdoms who swore an oath to them, it says right here in 48, and Jacob's seed swore unto them that they would not meddle with them. And all the kings of Canaan swore also to them, and Jacob's seed made them tribute from that day forward. They gave back the women. What did they take? Women, virgins, and little ones, the cattle, the spoil that they had taken. They gave back the booty, women, little ones, cattle, zone, flocks, and all the spoil that they had taken. Silver, gold, bdellium. Oh, my son looked up bdellium last week, bless his sweetheart, and it appears that it might be some kind of an incense-related thing like myrrh. Yeah, it's kind of fun to have him take the opportunity to look that up for me. Now it says, at the revolution of the year. Let's keep in mind how old everybody is. I think that it's important that we always remember this. When we had the Shechem incident, Jacob was 99. He then went after the Shechem incident. The boys destroyed the town. The people came against us, or they didn't fight us. And then he went to his father in Haran. He stayed in Haran for 5 years. So he was 100 when he left Shechem. Well, he was 99 and a half when he left Shechem. And in that half year of getting to his father, he was 100. Remember, Isaac is going to die at 180. And if Isaac dies at 180, Jacob is going to be 120. Isaac had Jacob when he was 60. So if he's coming to his father at 100, his father has to be 160. 20 more years left, doesn't he? But it's so interesting because that chapter is the chapter that says that Isaac died. Only Isaac didn't die yet, because he's still going to be alive today as we're talking about Joseph. He's going to be alive when Joseph becomes the second in command in Egypt. Isaac is. Wow. that's why I say it's so important for us to look at these dates and to work these out in our minds. So Jacob then was 100 when he came to his father the first time in Hebron. Then he stayed there for 5 years and he went back to Shechem. That's when the 6-day battle took place with the 7 cities. Now a year has gone by. Here it is, a revolution of a year. That makes Jacob in his 106th year, and there it is right there. 106th year in the life of Jacob. I love it when I'm telling a story and I can show you right there what it is. So anyway, we talked about them going back to Hebron, but still keeping cattle in Shechem. And that's what they're doing right now. The main boys, the 10 boys, Leah's sons, Bilhah's sons, Zilpah's sons, are all in Shechem. Joseph and Benjamin are with their father. Jacob sends Joseph to check on the brothers. Is it well with the brothers? Is it well with the cattle, he says. Joseph is 17 years old right now. Well, he has dreams. You know, you tend to think negative of Joseph. I guess I have in the past. He's having these dreams and, you know, his brothers are getting upset. Are you going to rule over us? Remember, that's what they were saying? Even his father, 11 stars. And the sun and the moon. Are you saying that myself and your mother are going to be ruled by you? Sometimes the things that Yahovah gives men does not go well even with their own brothers. Israel's seed might not be happy with some of Israel's seed in the future. Are you saying you're more important than us? That's what the brothers were saying, and they hated him for it. His father gave him preferential treatment, and they hated him still the more. Well, here's where he was checking on the welfare of their brethren and the welfare of the flocks. Is everything shalom with them and shalom with the flocks? Shalom has much to do with not only peace of mind, but also safety. So he sends Joseph away. You know what? I always wondered, how could he send Joseph away and not worry that somebody in the land is going to hurt Joseph? 17 years old, going 50 miles from home on foot. Did you ever wonder about that? Well, now we know it's because the Canaanites had great respect for the Hebrews. They ain't gonna mess with the Hebrews. It's too costly. Well, he couldn't find his brothers. They weren't in Shechem where they said they would be. They had moved to Dothan. Remember, Dothan was further up north. And he went to them. They saw him coming. They plotted to kill him. First, it was, who was it that plotted to kill him first? I want to say, it wasn't Reuben. Was it Simeon? And Simeon said, behold, the dreamer is coming. Therefore, let us kill him. Yes, Simeon. Simeon. Reuben said, it says, and Reuben heard the words of his brethren concerning Joseph. And he said unto them, you should not do this thing. Why did he say that? How can we look our father Jacob in the eyes, is what he's saying. Cast him into a pit. Cast him into this pit to die there, but stretch not forth a hand upon him to spill his blood. It says, and Reuben said this in order to deliver him from their hands and to bring him back to his father. Reuben, the eldest son, is starting to show some wisdom. He hasn't shown a whole lot of wisdom in the past. Well, they did. They took him, cast him into a pit, and were deciding what they were doing to him. Remember, pleading with his brothers, How could you treat me this way? You wouldn't treat a stranger this way. How could you treat me this way? We both have the same father. Not the same mother. Well, they were talking about it. Remember, they went a bow shot away. They couldn't stand to listen to the cries of their brother. This hits so close to home for me sometimes. I can remember when my family left me, how I cried, how I wept for them. They didn't hear me. So, while they're discussing what to do with Joseph, they see coming in a distance some Ishmaelites. Ishmaelites. Remember who the Ishmaelites are? Ishmael was the son of Hagar, the son of Abraham. But while they're talking about selling them to the Ishmaelites, lo and behold, from behind, Midianites are coming by, headed the other direction. The Ishmaelites are headed south. The Midianites are headed north toward Gilead, both going through this pass at Dothan that's going to drop down into the valley. So they're watching one group come up. Well, somebody else has taken Joseph out of the pit. Well, all of a sudden, here's the Midianites coming from behind them with Joseph. And they have a cow. What are you doing with our servant? The Midianites said, we found him. What do you mean, your servant? You obviously left him. Well, the Midianites understood that Jacob's seed, Joseph's brethren, were lying. And they called him on it. Simeon rose up. Remember, he gave a great and terrible shout and scared the Midianites so much that they said, all right, well, they got to take a different tact. So they said, well, if you're getting ready to sell him, what are you going to do with him? Sell him to us. Take him over your hand. So they gave him 20 shekels. 20 shekels. They just said 20 shekels. I assume it's shekels of silver. I don't know what it would be. I'm going to guess shekels of silver. Then the Midianites leave, but they have, what would we call it? Buyer's remorse. What have we done? This is a Hebrew. What if they come looking for this man and they find him in our hands? We're going to look guilty. So what do? They bump into the Ishmaelites. And now the Ishmaelites are going to buy them from the Midianites. Remember, Midian is the fourth son of Keturah, also a son of Abraham. Remember, Keturah is his concubine. The Midianites then sell him to the Ishmaelites. I'm giving you this story because we're going to go through it in Genesis today, and I want you to see how it fits together. It's going to make perfect sense now that we understand what's actually happening. Okay, so they had buyer's remorse, sold them to the Ishmaelites. Here they are selling them to the Ishmaelites. Come, let us sell this youth to the company of Ishmaelites. This must be where we left off. I turned to 37. We started the first couple, 3 verses in Genesis 37, which we're going to go over again today. And I guess that's where I have to go right now, isn't it? Genesis 37. So let's turn there. 37. Now Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger. Remember we talked about that last week. He was a Magor. There it is right here, Magor. Magor. Temporary abode. I like this. This is probably the word that was used in the Hebrew. We don't have it because it's Greek in the Hebrew for Hebrews. But it says, by faith he dwelt in the land of promise. I'm sure that word is Magor. He Magor in the land of promise as in a foreign country. That is how the Hebrews dwell. We Magor in a foreign country. That's how I dwell, and that is how Raya and I will dwell as well. This is the history of Jacob. History of Jacob. What is that all about? We're starting Joseph. Why does it say this history of Jacob? Joseph, being 17, was feeding the flock with his brothers, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report to his father. Sons of Zilpah, sons of Bilhah. There's only two of each. Here's what Yasher has to say about this event. And at the revolution of the year, Jacob's seed journeyed from Shechem, and they came to Hebron, to their father Isaac, and they dwelt there. Isaac's in Hebron, Jacob's in Hebron. But their flocks and herds, that is Zeon, and their herds, flocks, Zeon, are sheep and goats, and herds, cattle, they fed daily in Shechem. For there was there in those days good and fat pasture. And Jacob and his sons and all their household dwelt in the valley of Hebron, in the valley of Hebron. And it was in those days that in that year, being the 106th year of the life of Jacob, in the 10th year of Jacob's coming from Padan Aram, that Leah, Jacob's woman, died. She was 51 years old when she died in Hebron. Here's the wives. Jacob's wives, his father's women. That's what it says. His father's women, not wives. His father's women. Bilhah and Zilpah are now wives. Isn't it interesting? They're wives. How come they were concubines? Now, what was it? One of you guys last week said, "Oh, they got promoted from a concubine to a woman." Well, we talked about wives and concubines last week. I'm not going to go back into that. We're seeing there's a big difference between a concubine and a wife. Remember, the concubine is always going to come from the servants' quarters. The wives are going to come from the free woman's quarters. Verse 3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons. There it is, sons, his sons. This does not say children. They put children. Why? Because they want to include Dinah. But it isn't about Dinah. It's about the sons. He loved Joseph more than all his sons because he was the son of his old age. Also, he made him a tunic of many colors. Son of his old age. How is he the son of his old age? If anybody's the son of his old age, wouldn't it be Ben, who was born? He was born, Jacob was, or Joseph, Joseph was born when Jacob was 96. Remember, all the brothers were born, or 97, and all the other brothers were born from 91 to 97. Now, at 100, that's when Ben is born, Benjamin, and Rachel dies on the way to see his brother, on the way to see his father, Isaac. Here, in Yasher 41, it says, and when Joseph saw the strength of his brothers and their greatness, he praised them and extolled them. But he ranked himself greater than them and extolled himself above them. And Jacob, his father, also loved him more than any of his sons. Sons, not children. For he was the son of his old age, and through his love towards him, he made him a coat of many colors. It's about sons. I always wonder if there's something more to this coat of many colors. 4. But when his brothers saw that his father loved him more than all his brothers, remember, we're not talking about children, we're talking about brothers. The word here that they're using is ak. It's aki, and it's his. So a plural form of ak, and his brothers, saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, and they hated him. They hated and could not speak peaceably unto him. Well, this was the start of them disliking him. They loved their father. And it's odd that a father would love one son more than another. I guess I haven't figured out how that works, but I suppose that happens. You can have a son that's disobedient. I think of Esau and Jacob. But still, Isaac loved Esau. Remember, he was going to give Esau the blessing. What's up with that? Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, "Please hear the dream that I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Then behold, my sheaf rose, and also stood upright. And indeed, your sheaves stood all around, and bowed down to my sheaf." And all his brothers said, "Shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us?" For they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. The animosity is building. Let me show you something. I want to go to Isaiah. This is what's going to happen. What does happen? It's happened to me. It's happened to others. It says the righteous perish. Righteous perishes. Talking about more than one. And no man takes it to heart. Merciful men are taken away, while no one considers that the righteous is taken away from the evil. You know, this hatred that is building in his brothers towards Joseph is really the will of Yahovah. It's the providence of Yahovah. I like the idea of destiny. Do we have a destiny in our life? Do we have a destiny that we can fulfill in our life? I like to think that Yahovah has a plan. And if we will continue to follow him, we can get the best plan that he has for our life. That's our destiny. Joseph, in spite of all, has a destiny. He's given dreams. He's given feelings. He loves his brother. He respects his brothers. But somehow, this young man believes that he's destined for greater things than his brothers. My goodness! His brothers took out those cities. Miraculous feats. But he's feeling that there's something more for him. Then he dreamed still another dream and told his brothers and said, "Look, I've dreamed another dream. And this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars bowed down to me." It sounds repetitive from what I've already said today because we were reviewing from last week. So he told it to his father and his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come down to the earth before you?" Doesn't sound right to me, his father's thinking. But Joseph has been given a dream from Yahovah. He doesn't understand it. They don't understand it. And his brothers envied him. But his father kept the matter in his mind. Then his brothers went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them." Here it is, send. Shalach. Shalach. That's the sent one. Remember we were talking about the Shalakim, Shalach. Here it is, send. Va'eshlakaka. Shalach is the root word for that. Shalach. Send. And I think it's so cool that he's saying, "Here I am." Remember the verse in Isaiah? I think I've got it down here, yes. "Also I heard the voice of my master saying," remember, men are supposed to have masters. Women have masters. They serve their man. The man serves Jehovah. Everybody gets critical about Raya calling me Dod Adan, beloved master. Bless her sweet spirit. But I have a beloved master too, Adon. His name is Jehovah. "Whom shall I send, and whom will go for us?" Then I said, "Here am I, send me." Hininai, shalakni, shalakani, shalakani. Yeah, something like that. "Here I am, send me." And this is what Joseph is saying. He's going looking for his brothers. You know, I spend a lot of time looking for my brothers too. The lost sheep of Israel. Then he said to him, "Please go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flocks." Look what the well is. Both times, shalom. See if it is shalom with your brothers and shalom with the flocks. Is everything at peace? Is everybody safe? Shalom has a much broader meaning. The flocks. Here's the flocks. I always talk about the flocks, Zeon. There's the flocks. Sheep and goats. Hebron is 50 miles away from Shechem. Yet Israel is not concerned about Joseph going all that way by himself. Why? Yasher gives us the reason why. All Canaan feared Israel's seed. Yeah, they're not going to mess with Jacob's seed. Jacob's seed is going to mess with Jacob's seed. "And bring back word to me." So he sent him out of the valley of Hebron. This is the first time I've ever heard of the valley of Hebron in Torah. And he went to Shechem. Remember, I showed you last week the valley of Hebron. It did look kind of like it was in a valley. There was a Mount Hebron as well, and a valley below. Now a certain man found him. They called him a man. Remember in Yasher we said he was an angel. They called him an angel, a messenger. They call him a man here. That's why I say calling these things angels kind of sets us up for supernatural expectations. Jehovah doesn't really do a lot of that, supernatural things. His things are really down to earth. If we're talking about angels, for the most part, we're talking about men coming to other men, or maybe possibly even coming to women. Remember, Hagar had a messenger come to her. "Return to your mistress." Now a certain man found him, and there he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, "What are you seeking?" And he said, "I'm seeking my brothers. Please tell me where they are feeding their flocks." "I too am seeking my brothers, yes." And the man said, "They have departed from here, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. Let me just show you where this is on the map, just to remind you. I think some of you weren't even here last week, so it'd probably be good for you to see this. Here is Hebron, right down here where my cursor's at. They're going to go all the way to Shechem, 50 miles, and then beyond that to Dothan. Dothan is where the Ishmaelites are coming up from the valley. This is the Jezreel Valley. Coming up from the valley, there's two ways up, one here, one here. They're here. The Midianites are going to be coming from the south, going towards the north, and heading towards Gilead. The Ishmaelites are coming from Gilead on this trail right here, and then up the pass. This is where they're at. This is where the action is taking place in this story. Now, when they saw him afar off, even before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. Well, now we know that they was instigated by Simeon. I said, sounds a bit like the way those who say they are Yehovah's treat those who actually are Yehovah's. Yeah, it does. Then they said to one another, look, this dreamer is coming. Remember, Yehovah had actually shown Joseph what was to come in his dream. I've been called a dreamer. I guess I think of myself a lot like Joseph. I've been called a dreamer. Yehovah has shown me much between my sound sleep and my full awakening. That's when Yehovah speaks to me most. He speaks to me during the day as I meditate on his word. But you know what? I can't tell you how many times Yehovah has spoken to me just between that very sound sleep and full awakeness. That's when he speaks to me. How does he do that? I don't know. I like it. Then he said, look, this dreamer is coming. Come, let us kill him and cast him. Let me put this up. Come, let us kill him and cast him into some pit. Pit, a cistern, a well. This was almost even a cave. We're going to see later on that when Reuben comes looking for him, he goes actually down into the pit to see if maybe his brother was lost in the pit. So apparently this is not just a well straight down, but has maybe something that goes off to the sides of it as well. Because he's got to get down into it to try to find him. But Reuben heard it. And he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. Well, there you go. We had in Yasher that it was Reuben who said, no, don't spill his blood. Put him in a pit. Don't kill him. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit, which is in the wilderness, and do not lay hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands and bring him back to his father. Yeah, both accounts have Reuben trying to deliver Joseph back to his father out of his brother's hands. So it came to pass when Joseph had come to his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him. Then they took him, cast him into the pit, and the pit was empty, but there was no water in it. Well, we found the pit wasn't empty, that it may have been empty of water, but it was full of scorpions and snakes, is what it said in Yasher. And they sat down to eat a meal. Well, didn't say anything about the cries of Joseph, the pain of Joseph, emotional pain. Sat down to eat a meal, a bow shot away, it said in Yasher. And as they were thinking about what to do with Joseph in their meal, hey, normal day, They lifted up their eyes and looked, and there were the company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. They're coming from Gilead. That's what I said. The other guys are going to Gilead with their camels bearing spices, palm, myrrh, on their way to carry them down to Egypt. And Judah said to his brothers, what profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? He continues, come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brothers listened. There's confusion here. I know I've always been confused about this particular chapter and what actually had happened, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. But when I saw Yasher and read Yasher, it became clear. It became even more clear yesterday. I had forgotten a part of this, a piece of this, that also gives us more clarity. We'll see it at the end. Here's what I said about this confusion. There seems to be some confusion here. The Ishmaelites are Ishmael's seed through Hagar. Well, the Midianites are the sons of Midian's seed, who also are offsprings of Abraham, but through his concubine Keturah, not Hagar. Abraham again took a woman, and her name was Keturah, and she bore him, I want to see this, look what she bore him, Zimran, Yokshan, Medan. Medan is the third born, and Midian is the fourth born. It goes on, Abraham gave gifts to the concubines. Abraham gave gifts to the sons of the concubines' seed, which Abraham had. Okay, going down to Gilead, verse 26. So Judah said to his brothers, what profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let our hand be upon him, for he is our, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brothers listened. Now look what it says. They're talking about the Ishmaelites. Now it says, the Midianite traders passed by. So look what it says. They're confusing the Midianite traders with the Ishmaelite traders. The translators are. They don't realize there's two groups. The Ishmaelites are coming from the north. The Midianites are coming from the south. It says the Midianite traders passed by, so they said the brothers. It's the brothers. No, this is not the brothers. It's really the Midianites who pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. So you see, we are talking about the brothers selling him to the Ishmaelites, but the Midianites grab him, pull him out of the pit. They make it the brothers pulling him out of the pit because they don't know where the Midianites came from. And instead of the brothers selling him to the Midianites and the Midianites selling him to the Ishmaelites, they've got the brothers sold him to the Ishmaelites. Look what it says. Then the Midianite traders passed by. Well, what does Midianite traders have to do with anything in this story if we keep them out? So they said the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Well, that isn't what happened, is it? Remember, the Midianites took him, the brothers argued with the Midianites, and then sold him to the Midianites. The Midianites had buyer's remorse. They were afraid and sold him to the Ishmaelites. That's where it came from. And each one of those deals were closed with 20 shekels of silver. And there's going to be one more selling before he's actually sold to Potiphar. Oh my goodness! We got Midianites, we've got Ishmaelites, and we're going to have Medanites before it's done. And the Medanites, remember, that's the third born son. All this is Jehovah's providence working to get Jacob to where he belongs, to where he needs to be used by Yehovah. Then Reuben returned to the pit. And indeed, Joseph was not in the pit. And he tore his clothes. Oh no! Reuben took off. Gonna come up from behind. Take his brother, get him out of the pit while his brothers are eating, and bring him back to his father, but he's gone. And look, what does he say? And he tore his clothes. My brother is gone. Is anybody acting responsibly except Reuben? But now the deed is done. What is Reuben going to do? And he returned to his brothers and said, the lad is no more, and where shall I go? Yeah. What he's saying is, what am I going to tell my father? What shall I do? My father's going to look to me for the safety of my brother. So they took Joseph's tunic, killed a calf. Look at how fast things move in the Torah compared to what we saw last week. We spent the whole last week pretty much talking about these issues and what was the sequence of events that actually went down in all this. What are we going to do? I believe it was, who was it? I don't remember who it was. One of the brothers that said, let's kill a calf and put blood on the tunic and tear up the tunic and say an animal has done this. Now they're just jumping right in it. So they took Joseph's tunic and killed a kid of the goats and dipped the tunic in the blood. Then they sent, there it is, Shalach. They're sending now. Then they sent the tunic in many colors and they brought it to their father. Who did they send? Their fastest runner. Who is their fastest runner? Boy, I'm just really spacing out on names here this morning. Let's do this. Topic notes. I can easily go to 12 sons of Jacob. And it was Issachar who had the idea about the killing of the goat to deceive their brother. And it was Naphtali whom they sent, who was the fast runner back to their father. Their fastest runner. Oh, we're going to see Naphtali is quick. Their father sent his best, and the son sent only the coat back to their father. Oh, man. Their father loved Joseph. They sent the tunic of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, we have found this. Do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not? Well, how deceptive is that? Of course they know. And he recognized it and said, it is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Without a doubt, Joseph is torn in pieces. Set up the crime scene so that it appears that the deed's been done by an animal. And Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth on his waist, and mourned his son many days. Sackcloth on his waist. And all his sons and all his daughters, his sons and his daughters. What sons and daughters does he have? Arose. I mean, we know the sons, but we're talking about daughters. He's only got Dinah, doesn't he? No, there's more to this story. We're talking about his camp, the sons and the daughters of his camp. And we're going to actually say this, his sons and his servants, and they're tough. their sons and daughters arose to comfort Jacob, but he refused to be comforted. Sons and daughters, let's see what this is. Here's the bet. The note, his daughters, and this is all his sons, his sons, his daughters and his sons, all his sons and daughters. Yeah, they want to make it children. They want to make it children all the time. I hate it when they do that. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him, but he would not be comforted. And he said, for I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning. Thus his father wept for him. He was the one who sent his son to check on the welfare, the shalomness of the sons and the sheep. And he blames himself. But now, this is very interesting. Look what it says in this last verse. Now the Midianites, I thought the Midianites sold them to the Ishmaelites. How did the Midianites get into this picture all of a sudden? Well, it's actually not Midianites, it's Midianites. Look at this. Here's chapter 38 talking about the Midianites. Midyanim. They're very similar spelling, but it's because we're talking about a different man's seed. Midyanim are the seed of Midian. And it says, and the Midanim are the Midianites. Joseph was brought to Egypt by the Ishmaelites, then sold a third time, same price, 20 shekels of silver to the Midianites. Or maybe I should say Midianites. Midianites. How do we spell that? Here. Do we have that? Midan, M-E. Midianites. Sons of Midan. Third-born son. Not the fourth-born son, the Midianites. And Ishmael's seed, who had brought Joseph from the Midianites, who had bought him from his brother, and went to Egypt with Joseph. And they came upon the... what did I just do? There we go. Came upon... the borders of Egypt. And when they came near to Egypt, they met 4 men of Midan's seed. Oh, isn't that interesting? And they came near Egypt, and they met 4 men of Midan's seed, the son of Abraham, who had gone forth from the land of Egypt in their journey. So now here's the Ishmaelites coming into Egypt as the Midanites are leaving Egypt. And the Ishmaelites said unto them, do you desire to purchase this slave from us? And they said, remember, there's things going on. We're going to see it today. Why did they sell him for 20 shekels of silver? Look what they're going to sell him. Do you desire to purchase the slave from us? And they said, deliver him over to us. And they delivered Joseph over to them. And they beheld him that he was a very comely youth. And they purchased him for 20 shekels. For 20 shekels. There it is again, 20 shekels. The third time Joseph has been sold. And the Ishmaelites continued their journey to Egypt. And the Midan seed, also returned that day to Egypt. So they were leaving Egypt, but they came back. Why? Because of this. And the Midanim said to each other, behold, we have heard that Potiphar an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, seeks a good servant, Aved, who shall stand before him to attend him and to make him overseer over his house and all belonging to him. Oh, we get so ripped off in the Torah sometimes because we just don't have these extra pieces to fill in the blanks. It's almost an outline, isn't it? Well, now we're going to leave here and we're going to see kind of what more is happening. We saw him being sold here in Egypt. But what was that journey like for Joseph? Again, we get to have more things to fill in the blanks for us. Ooh, it's so fun to see this. Here's where we're going to pick up our story. And Joseph heard that the Ishmaelites were proceeding to Egypt. And Joseph lamented and wept at this thing that he was not to be so, that he was to be so far removed from the land of Canaan, from his father. And he wept bitterly whilst he was riding upon the camel. And one of their men observed him and made him go down from the camel and walk on foot. And notwithstanding this, Joseph continued to cry and weep. And he said, "Oh, Avi, Avi, my father, my father." He is weeping. It says far removed from the land of Canaan. I don't think it's about the land of Canaan. He's not in love with Canaan. He loves his father. It's from his father. Avi, Avi. And one of the Ishmaelites rose up and smote Joseph upon the cheek. And he still continued to weep. And Joseph was fatigued in the road and was unable to proceed on the account of the bitterness of his soul. And they all smote him and afflicted him in the road, and they terrified him in order that he might cease from weeping. They're beating him, probably kicking him. Does Yehovah care? This is Yehovah that has sent him on this journey. Look what it says next. And Yehovah saw the ambition of Joseph, the situation of Joseph perhaps, and his trouble. And Yehovah brought down upon the men darkness and confusion, and the hand of every man that smote him became withered. If you punch Joseph, the hand that you hit him with is going to become withered. Isn't that neat to see Yehovah caring about his servants? And they said to each other, "What is this thing that Elohim has done to us on the road?" And they knew not that this befell them on account of Joseph. And the men proceeded on the road, and they passed along the road to Ephrath, where Rachel was buried. Remember, that was Bethlehem that she was buried in. And Joseph reached his mother's grave, and Joseph hastened and ran to his mother's grave and fell upon the grave and wept. He's being taken from everything that he knows, everything that he cares about. Oh, I know that feeling. It's terrible. And Joseph cried aloud upon his mother's grave, and he said, "Ami, Ami, my mother, my mother. Thou who didst give me birth, awake now, and rise and see thy son, how he has been sold for a slave, and no one to pity him. Oh, rise and see thy son. Weep with me on account of my troubles, and see the heart of my brethren. Arouse, Ami, arouse. Awake from thy sleep for me, and direct thy battle against my brethren." Does he hate his brethren? No, I don't think he hates his brethren. He's disappointed. And how they stripped me of my coat, and sold me already twice for a slave, and separated me from my father, Avi, and there is no one to pity me. Arouse and lay thy cause against them before Elohim, and see whom Elohim will justify in the judgment, and whom he will condemn. Rise, my mother! Rise, awake from thy sleep, and see my father, how his soul is with me this day, and comfort him. And ease his heart. He's concerned about his father. What a nice boy. And Joseph continued to speak these words, and Joseph cried aloud and wept bitterly upon his mother's grave, and he ceased speaking. And from bitterness of heart he became still as stone upon the grave. Now look what it says. And Joseph heard a voice, speaking to him from beneath the ground. What's this? Which answered him with bitterness of heart, and with a voice of weeping and praying in these words. What's going on here? The dead can't talk. I think it's a vision. Here's what I put. This was 3 years ago is what I put. Dead people don't talk. You know, if you want to talk today about the state of the dead, that would be an interesting topic for after a class. I could show you some things about the state of the dead if you're interested. Dead don't talk. Dead are gone. No one can serve Yahovah. No one can pray to Yahovah once they're dead. Dead people don't talk. So who does he hear? A messenger of Yahovah? Is this an angel? Perhaps this is a vision. I lean towards the latter. I think it's a vision that Yahovah is giving him. She supposedly says, or Yahovah says, my son, Joseph. Beni, Joseph. Same word as Beni Israel. Can be my son also, but it can be my seed also. I have heard the voice of thy weeping, and the voice of thy lamentation. I have seen thy tears. I know thy troubles, my son. And it grieves me for thy sake. And abundant grief is added to my grief. Now therefore, my son, Joseph, my son, hope to Yahovah. There's good advice. Trust Yahovah. And wait for him, and do not fear. For Yahovah is with thee. He will deliver thee from all trouble. Oh man, I wish I would have read this 10 years ago when I was in such grief for my family. It would have been so true for me that very day. She continues, rise, my son, go down to Egypt with thy masters. Do not fear, for Yahovah is with thee, my son. Wow, there's good advice. Yahovah is doing this for Joseph's benefit and for the benefit of all Israel, all of Jacob's seed, and those who are joined to them, their servants, their children. And she continued to speak like unto these words unto Joseph. And she was still. And Joseph heard this, and he wondered greatly at this. Yeah, he's thinking, dead can't talk. How's this work? And he continued to weep. And after this, one of the Ishmaelites observed him crying and weeping upon the grave. I'm surprised I didn't see him sooner. And his anger was kindled against him. And he drove him from there, and he smote him and cursed him. And Joseph said unto the men, may I find grace in your sight to take me back to my father's house, and he will give you an abundance of riches. What did his mom just say? Go down to Egypt, trust Yahovah, serve your masters. What does he do? Take me back to my father. It's hard. Sometimes when you're in the midst of those troubles, it's so hard to trust Jehovah. And they answered him, saying, Art thou not a slave? And where is thy father? And if thou hast a father, thou wouldst not already twice have been sold for a slave for so little value. And their anger was still roused against him. And they continued to smite him and to chastise him. And Joseph wept bitterly. And Jehovah saw Joseph's affliction. And Jehovah again smote these men and chastised them second time. Joseph did not have to pray for help from Jehovah. It just came when Joseph was in his will. And Jehovah caused darkness to envelop them on the earth. Ooh, look at this. And lightning flashed, and thunder roared, and the earth shook at the voice of the thunder voice, the sound of the thunder, and the mighty wind. And the men were terrified and knew not where they should go. And the beasts and camels stood still, and they led them, but they would not go. They smote them, but they crouched upon the ground. And the men said to each other, What is this that Elohim has done to us? What are our transgressions? What are our sins that this thing has thus befallen us? Remember, these are sons of Ishmael. They know the Hebrews' Elohim. Their father was a Hebrew. And one of them answered and said unto them, Perhaps on account of the sin of afflicting the slave, has this thing happened to us this day. Now therefore, how often does this stuff happen to you guys? Yeah, I would think that had something to do with it. Now therefore, implore him strongly to forgive us, and then we shall know on whose account this evil befalleth us. And if Elohim shall have compassion over us, then we shall know that all this cometh on us on account of the sin of afflicting this slave. You know, I gotta figure, and it's gonna seem contrary, but I gotta think that the reason they sold Joseph to the Midianites when they got to Egypt was simply because they wanted to get rid of the baggage. They wanted to get rid of what they had done. They wanted to free themselves from any potential sin. It's going to take them a while to come to their senses. But let's think about this for a bit. And the men did so, and they supplicated Joseph and pressed him to forgive them. And they said, We have sinned to Jehovah and to thee. Now therefore vouchsafe to request of thy Elohim that he shall put away this death from among us, for we have sinned to him. And Joseph did according to their words, and Jehovah hearkened to Joseph. And Jehovah put away the plague which he had inflicted upon those men on account of Joseph. And the beasts rose up from the ground, and they conducted them. And they went on, and the raging storm abated, and the earth became tranquil. And the men proceeded on their journey to go down to Egypt. And the men knew that this evil had befallen them on account of Joseph. I wonder if the animals went down to their knees to keep from falling as the earth shook. Isn't it interesting that the earth is shaking and all these different things are going on all at once? Thunder, lightning. And they said to each other, Behold, we know that it was on account of his affliction that this evil befell us. Now therefore, why shall we bring this death upon our souls? Let us hold counsel what to do with this slave. And one answered and said, surely he told us to bring him back to his father. Now therefore come, let us take him back, and we will go to the place that he will tell us, and take from his family the price that we gave for him, and we will go on our way. They're not even going to try and make money. They just want to get back what they spent. And one answered again and said, behold, this counsel is very good. But we cannot do so, for the way is very far from us. How can it be that far? They were in Medan. This stuff happened at Bethlehem. They still got 30 miles to go to get to Hebron. And one more answered and said to them, this is the counsel to be adopted. We will not swerve from it. Behold, we are this day going to Egypt, and when we shall come to Egypt, we will sell him there at a high price, and we will be delivered of this evil. Hear that? They're still planning on selling him for a high price, but in the end, they sold him for what? The same price. And this thing pleased the men, and they did so. Greed finally won out, and they continued their journey to Egypt with Joseph. And when Jacob's seed had sold their brother Joseph to the Midianites, there it is, they sold him to the Midianites, not the Ishmaelites. Their hearts were smitten on account of him, and they repented of their acts. What have we done? Oh, we were tossed by our emotions. We weren't thinking clearly. Their hearts were smitten on account of him. And they repented of their acts. And they sought for him to bring him back. But they couldn't find him. No, they were looking the wrong way. They were going north. But Joseph was going south. They didn't know he'd been sold to the Ishmaelites. And Reuben returned to the pit. Here's Reuben. He's coming back. Save his brother. Bring him back to his dad. I think I said the same thing in the Torah. Then Reuben returned to the pit. And indeed, Joseph was not in the pit, and he tore his clothes. And Reuben returned to the pit in which Joseph had been put, in order to lift him out and restore him to his father. And Reuben stood by the pit. And he heard not a word, and he called out, Joseph! Joseph! And no one answered or uttered a word. And Reuben said, Joseph has died through fright, or some serpent has caused his death. And Reuben descended into the pit, and he searched for Joseph, and could not find him in the pit. And he came out again. Hear that? This pit's big enough that you can't see all of it from the top. And Reuben tore his garments, and he said, the child is not there. Look at, he calls him the child. 6 years is younger. The child is not there. And how shall I reconcile my father about him if he be dead? And he went to his brethren and found them grieving on account of Joseph, and counseling together how to reconcile their father about him. And Reuben said unto his brethren, I came to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not there. What then shall we say unto our father? For my father will only seek the lad from me. I'm the one who's going to be held accountable. I'm the eldest. And the brethren answered him, saying, thus and thus we did, and our hearts afterward smote us on account of this act. And we now sit to seek a pretext, a lie, how we shall reconcile our father to it. Oh, my goodness. And Reuben said to them, what is this you have done to bring down the gray hairs of our father in sorrow to the grave? The thing is not good that you have done. And Reuben sat with them, and they all rose up and swore to each other not to tell this thing unto Jacob. And they all said, the man who will tell this to our father, or his household, or who will report this to any of the land's seed, the people of the land, we will arise up against him and slay him with the sword. A death pact is what we're talking about here. And Jacob's seed feared each other in this manner, from the youngest to the oldest. And no one spoke a word, and they concealed the thing in their hearts. They're not going to tell their wives. They're not going to tell their children. They're not going to tell anybody. And they afterwards sat down to determine and invent something to say unto their father Jacob concerning all these things. And Issachar said unto them, is that who I said it was? Issachar? Issachar. Yes, I did. I always want to check my facts. I want to get it right so I can talk boldly. And Issachar said unto them, here is an advice for you. If it seems good in your eyes to do this thing, take the coat which belongeth to Joseph and tear it, and kill a kid of the goats and dip it in the blood, and send it to our father. And when he sees it, he will say, an evil beast has devoured him. Let him come up with the lie. We'll just fake the evidence so we don't have to lie. And Issachar's advice pleased them, and they hearkened unto him, and they did according to the word of Issachar, which he had counseled them. And they hastened and took Joseph's coat and tore it, and they killed a kid of the goats and dipped the coat into the blood of the kid, and they trampled it in the dust. And they sent the coat to their father Jacob by the hand of Naphtali, yes, the fastest runner. And they commanded him to say these words, we were gathered in the cattle, and had come as far as the road of Shechem, and farther, all the way to Dothan, when we found this coat upon the road in the wilderness, dipped in blood. Oh, wilderness, dipped in blood? Dipped in blood? It wasn't dipped in blood. It was covered with blood, wasn't it? And in the dust. Was that a fupa? I wonder. Now therefore know whether it be thy son's coat or not. And Naphtali went, and he came unto his father, and he gave him the coat. And he spoke unto him all the words which his brethren had commanded him. And Jacob saw Joseph's coat, and he knew it, and he fell upon his face to the ground and became as still as stone. Can you just see him collapse to his knees, probably then to his hands, in grief? And afterwards he rose up and cried with a loud voice, a loud and weeping voice. And he said, it is the coat of my son Joseph. Oh my God. Poor Jacob. And Jacob hastened and sent one of his servants to his sons, who went to them and found them coming along the road with the flock. And Jacob's seed came to their father about evening, and behold, their garments were torn. They tore their garments. They're in grief, and dust was upon their heads. And they found their father crying and weeping with a loud voice. And Jacob said to his sons, tell me truly, what evil have you this day suddenly brought upon me? You know what? Doesn't it? It seems to me that Jacob has some doubts about their story. Does he know? Does he suspect? Think about it as we listen to this. Just some of the things that he says. Tell me truly. I mean, just the fact that he says, tell me truly. Don't lie. Well, does he usually say that? Tell me truly, what evil have you this day suddenly brought upon me? And they answered their father Jacob, saying, We were coming along this day after the flock had been gathered in, and we came as far as the city of Shechem by the road in the wilderness. And we found this coat with blood upon the ground, and we knew it, and we sent it unto thee, if thou couldst know it. Of course, they knew it. And Jacob heard the words of his son, and he cried out with a loud voice. And he said, It is the coat of my son. An evil beast has devoured him. That's what they wanted him to think. Joseph is rent in pieces. Oh. For I sent him this day to see whether it was well with you, shalom with you, and shalom with the flocks, and to bring me a word again from you. And he went as I commanded him, and this has happened to him this day, while I thought my son was with you. And Jacob's seed answered and said, He did not come to us, neither have we seen him. Now they're lying. From the time of our going out from thee until now. And when Jacob heard their words, he again cried out aloud. And he rose up and tore his garments, and he put sackcloth on his loins. And look at it, sackcloth on his loins, girding his face with sackcloth. It sounds to me like you're putting sackcloth. When you're wearing sackcloth, you're wearing it on your loins. Interesting. And lifted up his and wept bitterly, and he mourned and lifted up his voice in weeping, and exclaimed and said these words. Which words did he say? Here's the same thing. This is, again, you see the grief, the emotions going through this man Jacob, even his sons, after repenting of what they've done. We're going to see they're going to try to find Joseph later on. But all Torah says, then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth on his waist. There it is, on his loins. And mourned for his son many days. Well, we have no idea how much mourning is going on here. And Joseph, he says, Joseph, my son, oh, my son, Joseph, I sent thee this day after the welfare of thy brethren, and behold, thou hast been torn in pieces through my hand. Has this happened to my son? What's he doing? He's blaming himself. Jacob is blaming himself for his son's death. It grieves me for thee, Joseph, my son. It grieves me for thee. How sweet was thou to me during life, and now how exceedingly bitter is thy death to me. Oh, that I had died in thy stead, Joseph, my son. For it grieves me sadly for thee, my son. Oh, my son, my son. Joseph, my son, where art thou, and where hast thou been drawn? Arouse, arouse from thy place. Arise, arise from thy place, and come and see my grief for thee. Oh, my son, Joseph. Come now and number the tears gushing from my eyes down my cheeks, and bring them up before Yehovah, that his anger may turn from me. Oh, poor Jacob. He's blaming himself for the death of Joseph, and he thinks Yehovah now is mad at him. Oh, Joseph, my son, how dost thou fall by the hand of one by whom no one has fallen from the beginning of the world unto this day? What a strange sentence that is. For thou hast been put to death by the smiting of an enemy, inflicted with cruelty. But surely I know that this has happened to thee on account of the multitude of my sins. Oh, poor Jacob. Arise now and see how bitter is my trouble for thee, my son. Although I did not rear thee, nor fashion thee, nor give thee breath or soul, but it is Elohim who formed thee and built thy bones and covered them with flesh and breathed into thy nostrils the breath of life, and then he gave thee unto me. No one can know this kind of loss until it happens to them. Yeah, this is how I grieved for my family. Now truly Elohim, who gave thee unto me, has taken thee from me, and such then has befallen thee. And Jacob continued to speak like unto these words concerning Joseph. And he wept bitterly. He fell to the ground and became still. And all Jacob's seed, seeing their father's trouble, they repented of what they had done, and they also wept bitterly. Oh, they're crying for another reason, aren't they? And I think they're crying more for what they did to their father. Now, they're remorseful what they did to Joseph too, I'm sure. And Judah rose up and lifted his father's head from the ground and placed it upon his lap. Look at this. What's he, the fourth born son? Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. And lifted his father's head and put it on his lap. And he wiped his father's tears from his cheek. And Judah wept an exceeding great weeping, whilst his father's head was reclining upon his lap, still as stone. And Jacob's seed saw their father's trouble, and they lifted up their voices and continued to weep. And Jacob was yet lying upon the ground, still as stone. And the whole household of Jacob rose up and mourned, a great mourning on account of Joseph and their father's trouble. And the intelligence reached Isaac. Here's Isaac. I put C. Isaac is still alive in Genesis 37, even though it looks like he died at the end of Genesis 35. We were reading it earlier. It says, and they buried Isaac. Jacob and Esau buried Isaac, was the last verse of chapter 35. And he's still going to live until Joseph rules Egypt. Oh my goodness, isn't that interesting? And the intelligence reached Isaac, the son of Abraham, and, the father of Jacob. And he wept bitterly on account of Joseph, he and all his household. And he went from the place where he dwelt in Hebron, and his men with him. And he comforted Jacob his son, and he refused to be comforted. And after this, Jacob rose up from the ground, and his tears were running down his cheeks. And he said unto his son, rise up and take your sword and your bows and go forth into the field and seek whether you can find my son's body and bring it unto me that I may bury it. Looking for some closure. Not going to get it. Seek also, I pray you, amongst the beasts, and hunt them, that which shall come from the first before you seize, and bring it unto me. Perhaps Jehovah will this day pity my affliction, and prepare before you that which did tear my son in pieces, and bring it unto me, and I will avenge the cause of my son. Ooh, he wants closure. He also wants payback, revenge. Remember, there's an avenger of blood, but it's an animal. And his sons did as their father had commanded them, and they rose up early in the morning, and each took his sword and his bow in his hand, and they went forth to the field to hunt the beast. And Jacob was still crying aloud and weeping and walking to and fro in the house and smiting his hands together, saying, Joseph, my son, Joseph, my son. And Jacob's seed went into the wilderness to seize the beasts. And behold, a wolf came towards them, and they seized him. I think it's a her. And brought him unto their father. And they said unto him, This is the first we have found, and we have brought him unto thee, as thou hast commanded us. And thy son's body we could not find. And Jacob took the beast from the hands of his son, and he cried out a loud weeping voice, holding the beast in his hands. And he spoke with a bitter heart unto the beast. I could almost see him grabbing each side of that beast's head and looking it straight in the eyes. Why didst you devour my son Joseph? And how didst thou have no fear of Elohim of the earth, or of my trouble for my son Joseph? And thou didst devour my son for naught, because he committed no violence, and didst thereby render me culpable on his account. Therefore, he's saying, I'm responsible for my son's death. Therefore, Elohim will require him that is persecuted. I don't even know what that means. And Jehovah opened the mouth of the beasts in order to comfort Jacob. Look at this. Jehovah is going to make a beast speak. We're talking like Balaam's ass. And Jehovah opened the mouth of the beast in order to comfort Jacob with its words. And it answered Jacob and spoke these words unto him, As Elohim liveth, who created us in the earth, us, you, and me, and all the other animals, and all the other men, and as thy soul liveth, my Adon. He calls Jacob his Adon. I did not see thy son, neither did I tear him to pieces. But from a distant land I came to seek my son, whom went from me this day, and I know not whether he is living or dead. He's in the same situation. And I came this day to the field to seek my son, and your sons found me and seized me and increased my grief, and have this day brought me before thee, and I have now spoken all my words to thee. And now, therefore, O Son of Man, Son of Man, I wonder if that's Adam's seed. I am in thy hands, literally, and do unto me this day as seems good in thy sight. But by the life of Elohim, who created me, I did not see thy son, nor did I tear him to pieces, neither has the flesh of man entered my mouth all the days of my life. And when Jacob heard the words of the beast, he was greatly astonished. Yeah, I'll bet. And sent forth the beast from his hands, and says she went her way. So was it a male or a female? This doesn't matter. And Jacob was still crying aloud and weeping for Joseph day after day, and he mourned for his son many days. Well, we're going to go just a little bit further. This is chapter 44. And Ishmael's seed, who had brought Joseph from the Midianites, who had brought him from his brethren, went to Egypt with Joseph. And they came upon the borders of Egypt. And when they came near to Egypt, they met 4 men of Madon's seed. Madon, he's the third-born son. Midian was the fourth-born son of Abraham, who had gone forth from the land of Egypt on their journey. They're leaving Egypt. And the Ishmaelites said unto them, Do you desire to purchase a slave from us? Isn't it funny that they're now willing to sell this slave so cheaply? Is it because of the rebuke they got from Jehovah? I think it was. Do you desire to purchase a slave from us? And they said, deliver him over to us. And they delivered Joseph over to them. And they beheld him that he was very comely youth. And they purchased him for 20 shekels. Again, he's being sold a third time for 20 shekels. And the Ishmaelites continued their journey to Egypt. And the Medanim, the Medan seed, also returned that day to Egypt. They were leaving Egypt, but they came back to Egypt. Why? And the Medan said to each other, Medanim said to each other, behold, we have heard that Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, seeketh a good servant who shall stand before him to attend to him and make him overseer over his household and all belonging to him. Now therefore, come, let us sell him for what we may desire, if he be able to give unto us that which we shall require of him. And the Midanim went and came to the house of Potiphar. And they said unto him, we have heard that thou seekest a good servant to attend thee. Behold, we have a servant that will please thee. If thou canst give us that which we desire, and we sell him unto thee. And Potiphar said, bring him before me, and I will see him, and if he please me, I will give unto you that which you require of him. And the Midanim went and brought Joseph, and placed him before Potiphar. And he saw him, and he pleased him exceedingly. Remember, Joseph can read. Joseph is a smart young man. And Potiphar said unto him, tell me what you require of this youth. And they said, 400 pieces of silver. Been sold 3 times for 20 shekels. We don't even know what shekels were. Here's 400 pieces of silver. We desire from him. And Potiphar said, I will give it you if you bring me the record of his sale to you, and will tell me his history, or perhaps he may be stolen, for this youth is neither a slave nor the son of a slave, an Aved, or the son of an Aved. But I observe in him the appearance of a goodly and handsome person. And the Midanim went and brought unto him the Ishmaelites, who had sold him to them. And they told him, saying, he is a slave, and we sold him to them. Yeah, see, they put in Torah that it was the Midianites. No, it's the Midanim. And Potiphar heard the words of the Ishmaelites in his giving the silver of unto the Midanim. And the Midanim took the silver and went on their journey, and the Ishmaelites also returned home. Well, we're going to stop here. I've got 12:47. I do not want to get into the next section. There's a lot that I want to cover. Look at this. I want to read Genesis 38, which is all about Judah and Tamar and kind of an adventure that they had together. Tamar he brought for one of his sons, and he lost 2 sons who came to her, had a 3rd son. We're going to see about it next week. Then we're going to see in Yasher 45. I'm going to skip from verse 11 all the way. We're in 44, verse 11 right now. We're going to skip to verse 45. We're going to do 45 first. Then we're going to compare that. Boy, we're going to do 45 first, and then come and compare Genesis 46. We're going to jump from Genesis 38 all the way to Genesis 46, because we're talking about whom the sons are going to marry. And then, after we do that, we're going to read Genesis 39, and then come back to finish this, 44:11 through the end. How's that for a switch? All right, well, tomorrow I'm leaving, going to North Carolina, 3,000-mile journey. What an adventure this is going to be. Please, if you would, pray for me on my trip. that I have safety, that the car runs well, that there's no snow in the passes. That's the first thing I got to do is I got to get through Snoqualmie Pass, probably the biggest pass on the trip. It's probably going to be the hardest part. So pray that there's not going to be a lot of snow. I've got chains. I don't want to use chains. I don't have chains for the trailer. So I've got to go really, really, really slow. At any rate, do pray for me. I would covet your prayers. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. It's really been fun having so many of you here. Bob, you made it. Hi, buddy. Very good. And Nancy, you made it too. All right. Well, thank you for joining me. I'll see you all next week. No, I won't see you next week. That's my whole point. Just a reminder, I'm not going to be here next week. So we're going to take 2 weeks off, okay? I'm sorry. I just can't do it while I'm on the road. All right. Well, we'll catch you later. Bye now.